Hi everyone, I'm Glenda with SureFit Designs. Some of you know me as Glenda the Good Stitch. In this video, I'm going to talk about truing and perfecting the pattern. And that means that we're going to be comparing seam lengths and we're going to be comparing one seam going into another seam and what we should be looking for in our finished pattern. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're working with a bodice pattern, a pant pattern, a shirt pattern. The concept is the same. I'm going to demonstrate on a bodice pattern. But first of all, I'd like to take a look at a couple of conceptual ideas here. We're going to be talking about the neckline curve. So as we take a look at this little illustration, we're going to just say, first of all, that's center front, and we're not going to do a curve right off the bat. We're going to do a square neck, and this is the rest of the chest area coming up into the shoulder line, and there's the shoulder. So because we typically work on half a pattern and center front is often on the fold of the fabric, we need to make sure that that join or connection at center front is exactly square or 100% trued and perfect. So when I open up that example, you can see on my square neck, I am coming straight across up to the neck point and then into the shoulder line. So let's take a look at another example here. A jewel neck, that's the high round neck that we typically, start off with on a block, or what I call your body blueprint. So there I have center front and there's the shoulder line. Now we do need this little space here to be at 90 degrees, even if it's just for 1/4 of an inch on each side. So one handy way to set that up, take the line drafter and do a little cross mark, then you know it's exactly at 90 degrees. Then what you're going to do to draw the neckline is take the designing stylus, and now I'm going to draw what is a correct curvature coming into that 90-degree angle, and I'm doing it with the designing stylus tool. Now, as I take this and fold it on center front and cut my neck curve and cut the shoulder line. Now, when I open this one up, you can see that I've got a nice continuation of that curvature going across the front of my chest, and that's what you want. So now let me show you what some of the problems can be when you're drawing neck curves. Whoops, I don't want to fold that just yet. I'll use the designing stylus, and I'm going to draw a curve that would actually give it more of a V-neck. And so this is why it's really important to understand this whole concept. I do have my little straight line there, actually. I just did it in pencil. But you're going to see when I cut this, how even though I think I drew a curve, and I did draw a slight curve, when I cut this now and then open it back up so that I create the mirror image, now what I've formed is more of a V-neck formation. And so that's the kind of thing that you want to avoid. When people will write to me and say, my neck is too tight, one of the very first things I'll say is, did you get a deep enough curve on your neckline? And then we'll take a look at the opposite of the V-neck. And it's a really tight curve that flips up at center front. And to do that, I'm going to use our little tool, the Designer's Companion, which actually is great for all the tight little tiny curves that you might do on collars or pockets or cuffs. But I'll draw that curve because this situation can definitely happen as well. So now when I fold this one in half and I cut this, now this actually looked like a fairly good curve coming into center front, but you'll see what the problem is that I've created by coming up too high at center front. So when I open up this one, you can see that I've created a dip up like this, and so that wouldn't sew together well. In stitching, you'd be wanting to flatten that out. So now let's take a look at some actual pattern pieces now that you've seen the conceptual information that is the basis for truing our patterns. For convenience sake, and because of how small my table is here, I'm going to start with a sleeve pattern. And one of the first things I'll do is check the curve coming in at the underarm to the underarm seam. And so keeping in mind the concept that I just taught you, if this is too shallow, I'll get a V coming up the other side when it all gets joined together. So I'll take the line drafter, lining up one dominant line with the underarm curve, and I'll make a little cross mark here like this. And that's a pretty decent right angle that I formed right there. So that one I likely wouldn't change. Let's see what happens on the other side of the underarm of the sleeve pattern. This one also is not bad, but I'll turn this a little bit more towards the camera here so that you can see. I would be inclined to flatten that curve out just a little bit more coming into that underarm. I haven't changed this point, but it's when I sew these two seams together that the curves will be a nice continuation, and that's what we want to achieve. One other thing that I'll point out to you on a sleeve pattern is if you were to extend the grain line coming up like this, as we take a look at that cap curve, and now you're seeing 100% of the curve here, you want a nice continuation of that cap curve. You don't want it too pointed like that because that would not sew into the shoulder line well. So, all things to be aware of when you are truing a pattern. Now let's bring up this one. And this we've got here is the front. And I've just done a combination of the bodice front being attached to the skirt as if you were making a blouse. So the first thing to check is the neckline. So as I take the line drafter and line it up, this actually is a nice 90-degree angle right there. So there's nothing wrong with that curved jewel neckline. Now, as we take a look at the shoulder, at the neck point here, you're going to say, oh, that's not a 90-degree angle. And you're right, it isn't. But it's going to have a continuation going into the back neck curve, and I'll show you that in a moment because that's another way to double check your pattern and make sure that it's true. But let's check the armhole going into the shoulder line. Taking the line drafter and lining up the straight edge of it right at the shoulder point, this little beginning part of the armscye is exactly at 90 degrees, and that's what you want before you begin the curve for the armscye and the underarm. Taking a look at the side seam, if I line that up right here, and I'm just going to move the line drafter over so I've got a little bit more of a visual here. Again, if I drew a 90 degree right there, that's perfect. I don't need to make any changes to the underarm. And that's all, well, and this of course at the hem level, you want to make sure that that's a perfect 90 as well, if that's the style of hem you're using. And so we'll just line up the line drafter, and of course that's a perfect 90 degrees. So that's all good, and there's no changes that I would need to make on that particular piece. I'll just slide this over and bring up the back, and let's take a look at the initial steps here. Using the line drafter, I'll take a nice straight line right here to the center back, and this also is 90 degrees. And of course, I'm showing you what is correct, but if it isn't, you obviously do need to erase and make that change so that it comes in straight, if that's what your intention is. And I'll check this shoulder going into the armhole, and that of course is at 90 degrees. Now I'm going to take a look at the underarm, and so we'll put a nice dominant line of the line drafter on the side seam, and what you're seeing here is not perfection. This curvature is too shallow, so when it connects with the underarm on the front, you're not going to have that smooth continuation of the curve. So I would want to redraw that and then flatten out the underarm section of that curve. And I know the hemline is straight as well. So that's how you true and perfect these curves going into a straight line. Now, the next thing that you'll want to check in your patterns is that your stitching lines are the same length, particularly side seam to side seam. And let's see, what do I want to do here first? I think I'll do the side seam from the front to the back. So I'm going to take the back pattern and lay it over top of the front pattern, and I'm going to line up my underarm points like this and mark a mark that indicates the top leg of the dart, because when that dart is sewn out on the front of the bodice, then you're going to move that line down to the bottom leg of the dart as if you've sewn the dart out on the bodice. My waistlines line up exactly and my hem level lines up exactly. But I hope you can see this. I'm going to move this hip line into more of the direct view of the overhead camera. When I line this up, you can see that my curves for the side seams aren't identical. And you really should check that and make them identical. So in this case, what's likely happened is when I was drawing the pattern, I likely just used a slightly different curve on the designing stylus on the back than I did on the front, obviously not realizing that I'd done that. So what you want to do is make one wider or the other one narrower, or you can split the difference. And of course, at home, you're going to be using a regular pencil for all your marks. So when you need to come and erase this, it's going to be very easy to do on the tracing vellum, because your tracing vellum isn't going to go into shreds or holes. It's a very durable see-through product, as so many of you know. So erase one line, make it the same as the other. And one other thing I should point out to you, you'll notice that I don't have any seam allowances on here. And I didn't for a very specific reason, because if I need to make a change, I want to do it without seam allowances because it's less lines to erase. And also, you're getting a much cleaner view and vision of where some of your little discrepancies might be in the pattern. One other thing that I want to take a look at is the shoulder line. So in order to check the shoulder line lengths, I'm going to put the front over top of the back like this, and my red pencil is underneath there. Let me just grab it because I need it. And line up shoulder point to shoulder point, and then I'm going to make a mark right here indicating the side leg of that back shoulder dart. Then I'm going to take that line and move it over to the other side of the shoulder dart, because what I want to check is that my shoulder seam lines are exactly the same length, and they are. Again, if they weren't, this is the time to change them. And one last thing that I would like to show you is looking at your neckline curve. So I'm going to flip this over, and we're going to pretend like we're sewing the shoulder line together. Of course, the dart would have already been sewed out of the blouse back. And since I know already the shoulder lines are exactly the same length, I know this is where my neck points are going to meet on the pattern. And you can see that from the back neck curve to the front neck curve, that's a beautiful continuation of the neckline curvature. And that is why these points did not need to be at a 90-degree angle. So there are a lot of tips for you in truing and perfecting your pattern. And I do encourage you to do that. As I said, do it before you add your seam allowances, and then come back and add your 5/8 inch seam allowances on afterward, which of course can be easily done with the seam allowance markings on the designing stylus, and with our newest essential tool, the line drafter, we also have 5/8 inch seam allowances on there as well. Well, I really sincerely hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, I do invite you to join our worldwide community of like-minded seamstresses using SureFit designs. You know, we have 3 ways to bring you into our community. Number 1, please make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We now have over 200 free educational videos to help you with fitting, designing, and sewing. Number 2, make sure that you join our newsletter list, and you're going to find my newsletter sign-up form at the bottom of all my web pages, and my website is www.surefitdesigns.com, and when you sign up, there are 4 free gifts to get you started. And last but certainly not least, we have a great Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/SureFit Designs. We have over 5,000 users worldwide who are having fun, sharing their projects, helping one another, and of course I chime in and answer the questions as well. So make sure you join our community, and thank you so much for watching.